That's Carlisle Circus, one of Belfast's busiest junctions. But just tucked down here in Henry Street is one of Belfast's best little historic treasures. The historic treasure in question is Clifton Street Graveyard. It was opened in the late 18th century for the great and good of Belfast for the next century to be buried here. This place has got a cracking history. Burke and Hare were alleged to have robbed graves from here, and it's also filled with the graves of many of the United Irishmen. Now the great story about that is, those guys were Irish nationalists, but this is largely a Presbyterian cemetery. The rebellion that they took part in was in 1798, and it was rapidly followed by the Act of Union in 1801, which made the sons of the men buried in here Unionists within a decade. Fast forward 80 years, and such men's minds had turned from politics to sport. Across the road here is the site of the Queen's Hotel in Belfast, and in 1880 they took part in the most famous meeting of Irish football history. That meeting was to form a football association for the whole of Ireland, the Irish Football Association. It was to be based on Scottish rules, and they were also going to form an Irish Cup competition. Sadly, the Queen's Hotel is long gone, as you can see from the car park that stands here now. But also, sadly, there's no blue plaque. Keep your finger out, Belfast City Council. Now, the hotel was where the association was born. This is where the game was born. This is where they played the first ever Irish Cup final, and it was also the home of Cliftonville Football Club. And that's where we're going to go today. Obviously, they don't play here anymore. They're across the road now in Solitude, the oldest ground in Irish football. And this is where Cliftonville play now. This is Solitude, and unlike the Queen's Hotel, it does have a blue plaque. To John McAleary, who was the founder of Cliftonville, and also made that appointment at the Queen's Hotel with other people, formed the Irish Football Association. The ground has stood here since 1890. It's hosted Irish Cup finals, it's hosted internationals in the old British Home Championship against England, Scotland and Wales up until 1909, and today they're playing Portadown in the Irish League. record crowd for this ground. Wasn't for a home international, wasn't even for a Cliftonville game, it was for an Irish Cup final. Glenavon played here in 1960. 22,000 saw the Lurgan Blues win the Irish Cup. Now, this is the only part of the ground that survives from that Irish Cup final in the 1960s. Built in 1950, replaced the old grandstand that stood here before that, which had burned down in 1948. It was condemned a couple of years ago, but Cliftonville have done a wee bit of work to get it back up to scratch again. Now, the League Cup final is going to be played here in a couple of weeks' time. Cliftonville versus local rivals Crusaders. Glentoran were supposed to hold a long story, not going to go into it. But this seating here is modular seating if you're watching from UEFA, but it's temporary seating if it's not. This is where the Portadown fans will be today. This used to be known as the bowling green end. I think it probably still pretty much is, but it was developed properly in 2001 with this new stand and seating. Very, very good for away fans in the Irish League. Cliftonville haven't had the best of luck when it's come to fires. Not only has the grandstand suffered a fire, but this used to be a terrace, and it suffered a fire in the 1980s and eventually then had to be demolished. Today it's undeveloped, but it was used recently for a European Cup game against Celtic. And it's going to be used again for the League Cup final. That's more that UEFA modular seating thing. So I thought the game went very well, Jackie. Yep. 4:45, well, 5 o'clock-ish, BBC this evening. They'll be talking to the Portadown and Cliftonville boss. Whoever scores a winning goal in here. It's in between the two dugouts on the waterworks side. Got their own scoreboard here at Cliftonville. And over here, this is the most iconic part of the ground. This was the cage. Now the cage was where the diehards of Cliftonville used to stand every Saturday afternoon. And it was an old barrel roof stand. Iconic photographs of them all behind the mesh watching Cliftonville playing in the 70s and 80s. It had to go. And now they've got a brand new stand here built in 2009. But it's still where the diehards like to go on a Saturday afternoon. This building behind me is the most iconic building in the Irish League. Known simply as the White House, this was built with the ground in and around 1890. Some of the greats of the Victorian era came out of those dressing rooms back there. They're not used anymore, obviously. The likes of Steve Bloomer and Billy Meredith to play for England and Wales here. The English left Ireland without victory for the very first time at this ground in the 1890s, and the Welsh hated Solitude. It was used up to 1909. The social club is access from the street. Obviously there is access to the pitch, but obviously you're not meant to go out there to watch the game. We're underneath the main stand, the one built in 1950. A pint, £2.90. That's a pint, yeah. £2.90, Beck's, Tennant's, Caledonia Smooth, Guinness. And if you ask the poor man really nicely, you might get a cuppa, as long as he's not busy. I bet he won't thank me for saying that. Red Shop's back over that way beside the chimney. As ever, couldn't do an Irish League Premier League team without getting a scarf. This one's a Champions 2012-2013 scarf, no less, so come on you Reds! Half 10, draw on, man. It's your turn.
This is the Cliftonville Code of Conduct. Please do not use sectarian, racist or any inappropriate language. Do not display any racist or sectarian emblems or banners. Do not use foul, abusive or insulting language, gestures or threatening behaviour. Do not throw missiles. Do not enter onto the pitch area. found was number 18, Gary Twig.